When I mentioned the whole chomoification of gaming stuff, I always wonder why neither side, of that, false psychotomy bullshit, the leftist feminist bullshit and then the rightist anti-woke shit. Why neither side of that ever uses Deus Ex Invisible War is basically their example of a game that like is a counterpoint to the other side, right? And I think probably a big part of that is that humans are just hive mind cockroaches and they want to just, shut their brain off. And part of that is, oh, Deus Ex Invisible War sucks. And it's like, they probably never played it. But I think part of what makes that game invisible is that, really satisfying everyone is basically satisfying no one. And I think that's probably the reason neither of them will ever talk about Invisible War, is because it really does, play fair. And so, like, for an example, the feminists should love Invisible War because all of the female characters are realistically modestly attractive. They don't just exist to be tits and ass or appeal to a, supposed male power fantasy. They actually are interesting characters with realistic motivations. They have believable power positions. And like, that's another thing for the anti-woke types. The females in power positions in the game are there for believable reasons, you know, and on the same, aspect of attractiveness. Yeah, they don't, look like, anime titties or like Laura Croft here or whatever. But again, you know, most of the females are, they look like about average attractiveness, and even the most attractive ones are still realistically so. So it's not some woke thing of where they're taking attractive women out just as a feminist way to like punish men for daring to have sexuality at all, right? It's like they already want to arbitrarily restrict your access to love and sex. Now they want to age restrict the internet so you can't even look at porn. Now they want to take, attractive females out of video games, knowing that the majority of game players are men who are heterosexual. And so the whole point is to just desexualize men, right? It's not about realistic representation. It's about, again, technically true what the anti-woke types say. It's not about what they're including or putting in. It's about what they're taking out. And so, they add top surgery scars, but they take out what dudes want to see, to the point of they take out a lot of natural female body variation. Because again, it's not really about diversity or inclusion or any of this bullshit. It's about an anti-male narrative. But so that's why I think the female characters and just overall representation, like, both sides should consider Deus Ex Invisible War the perfect game. But, again, I think that's the problem, is that really nobody wants accurate representation or this or that. They might say that as an antithesis, but really humans are only adverse to propaganda that they don't agree with, right? And it's actually one of the strongest points of Invisible War is how believable the characters and the interactions are, right? So, you know, it just it feels real, even if it's a kind of like sci-fi almost sort of thing, as far as the visual aesthetic, just because, like in the first game, characters they have motivations that are believable for a real individual, even if they're petty, even if they just want control, but like it's never a feminist or whatever type of narrative kind of bullshit. Really, any side, it's like the game plays too fair, and I think that might be a reason why this hyper politicized false dichotomy shit nobody really wants to use the game as representative of their side or whatever, because it kind of doesn't take any. It's like me. Humans don't like me because I don't do bullshit like that. I live in reality, and they hate that. But I've always liked Invisible War for how believable the characters are. And, when the anti-woke types talk about, the feminists will say that, oh, they're just mad about black chicks in games or whatever. But that's not what it's not about the inclusion stuff. But, when they say that you can't necessarily articulate it, but you know a woke game when you see it, I actually think I have a great example of that. So, like, if you play the original Deus Ex and you play Leo Gold, or you get to Leo Gold, it's a black dude, but him being a black dude has nothing to do with the character. It's just who the guy is. And when you talk to him, all he talks about is how the state fucks over the individual. And he's got a problem with that shit. Well, now if you compared that to a modern game, if it were made now by like, the Sweet Baby Inc. or like whatever it is, type of like focus group shit, then he would probably end up like that one black dude in that recent Wolfenstein game, where he's basically just there to recite a bunch of, like civil rights era stuff. And he's very clearly just there to pander to black people to try to get them to buy the game. And it's like, dude, black people don't even want to see that because they know what you're doing. And it's lame. It's not believable. And it's like, I think that makes a good way of trying to articulate that. That's what Leo Gold would be like in a modern, if Deus Ex got made now. It wouldn't, and then, when nobody liked the character, the feminists would say it's because, oh, you just hate black men, or, oh, you're just straight white males with your, like, what, and it's like, no, they hate the character because it sucks, right? And I think that's a good example of that. But if you look at the female characters in Invisible War, it's about split equally, the racial diversity, everything about the game is believable. It's like when the female, it's like Donna Morgan, Lin Mei Chen, uh, Clara Sparks, Dr. Nassif. It's like that one chick at the Heron's Loft Apartments. I think it's the WTO chairman or something, a minor character later in the game. It's like there's a female character like that for pretty much every equivalent male character. And it's like, you know, their motivations, just like in the first game, are due to their philosophy of how they see the world. And, it's more of about a general idea of how society should, run, or like freedom, or like whatever. And it's not about, oh, we got to get back at these straight white males, girl power. And then like the dudes, it's never, you know, like, oh, there's too much, XYZ minority, or like whatever is fake BS either side wants to like use as a political narrative. But I would say probably most of the interesting characters in the game are actually the female characters. But it's so organic, right? It's like they're the interesting characters just because they are, and not because the writers made them the most interesting, because they're female and they want to push some kind of agenda or whatever, right? Like the game is so realistic about what the character representations that I feel like it's really accidental, right? It's like they just wanted to make interesting characters and weren't thinking about it. And that's another thing that lends to the believability. And, the Gamergate type of shit about how games are like a male power fantasy or whatever. It's like, well, you can play as Alex Denton female, right? And then, I guess technically there's some damsel in distress moments. Like you got to save Nicolette Duclair and Donna Morgan, or then there's another part where you can save, one of your fellow cadets or whatever, Clara Sparks. It's like, yeah, but again, you can be the dame saving the damsels, right? So it's not even necessarily that. And then at the same time, there's, equal times where you save, like the male cadet that you befriend in Tarsus or whatever. Leo Jankowski is just the male equivalent of the Clara Sparks character, right? Like different stuff like that. And then something that's personally salient for me is that it's not in your face with gay shit like that's supposed to like make me like the game more or whatever. So the game also has one of the most accurate representations of homosexuals I think I've ever seen in a video game. It doesn't come off as pandering. It just comes off as like basically there's one point in the game that I can even remember there being gay characters, and it's one of the bars in the Seattle area part of it. And when you go into the bar, it's literally just two side NPCs that you don't even have to talk to. But if you're male Denton, yeah, one of them will try to flirt to you and actually ask you, oh, hey, that other guy, could you tell him I like him or whatever, because he's like too shy or whatever. And one of them might flirt with you, but you can just tell him I'm not interested, right? So you even have that choice. But if you're female Denton, they basically tell you to buzz off, right? So like these two side NPCs you don't even have to interact with. The only way that you would know about it is if you talk to them directly, and it's not some spiel about gay rights or whatever bullshit. They're just characters that are just there, and it's just the characters are gay because that's who they are. Both of them are black, by the way, you know. And it's like, yeah, like I would prefer that if they're going to be there. Again, they feel realistic. I mean, who wouldn't expect there to be a couple gay dudes in a bar in Seattle, right? But they just feel like real individuals, like doing real stuff. And you don't even have to encounter them. None of the story critical stuff even requires you to go there, I'm pretty sure. But it definitely doesn't require you to talk to them. Um, some of the stuff in the game might be easier or harder depending on whether you're male or female Denton. Like if you're male, you can play along, and one of them will give you the key to his penthouse, right? And it's like you don't get that route if you're female Denton. But again, there's benefits to playing as female or male Denton. Here or there, there's trade-offs, but they're believable. And that's a big reason I think why when you get the game channels now, they talk about how older games were better, and they were. Uh, and they talk about this is a big reason why older games were better. I would say that's technically true because it's not that there's women characters or even women characters that aren't like super hot or whatever, or even that there's gay characters or whatever. It's just the fact that they're not believable. And it's like if you want to make a pandering game, then make a pandering game, right? There's plenty of like gay, dating simulator visual novel stuff, and you know what? I don't play any of it because it's stupid and I'm not interested, right? It's like it doesn't make a game playable to me because they have gay characters. I don't give a shit, right? But I give a shit about characters with believable motivations, and it's like I'm looking for like an escapism, and it would be nice if I could escape just human bullshit in a video game, even to that degree. So I don't like it when games. Oh, now I got the black helicopter going overhead. How convenient. I guess they used their millimeter wave to hear I was, guilty of wrong speech, I guess. You can literally hear that, can't you? Right? That's actually another thing. If there's benefits to one side or another in Invisible Wards for believable reasons, you get better landing spots with Sid versus Ava, but that's because with Sid you pay him, whereas Ava will fly you for free. So you can't even say, "Oh, see, the males are getting unfair." It's like, no, you got a better spot because you paid for it. But yeah, I guess the black helicopters are proof that the video's over, right?